Hey guys, welcome to the Coach's Corner presented by On Track College Advising. Excited to be here today with Andrew Guzek, who is currently the Assistant Compliance Director at Ohio State. But before he got there, Andrew spent time at Valparaiso High School in Northwest Indiana, ended up going to Valparaiso University, where I had the pleasure of coaching him in the throwing events for track and field. He currently ranks 4th in the shot put and 3rd in the men's weight throw on our top 5 list at the school. After he graduated from Valpo, he moved on to Marquette, where he got his law degree. And then after graduating Marquette, ended up out at Fresno State as a compliance director, assistant compliance director out there for a few years, and then ultimately moved to Ohio State. So Andrew, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to connect and to talk. So welcome. I have a couple questions for you today. Really, I'm just curious about your role right now and what you're doing in compliance. And then for those that just have no idea what compliance directors, maybe you can share what the role is that they play in college athletics for us.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks, Coach Moore, whatever. I might call you a few different things throughout this unique relationship we had. Like Coach Moore said, I spent my 4 years at undergrad at Valpo, did the whole throwing thing. Had some fun along the way. And so currently here at Ohio State as one of our assistant directors for compliance, my day-to-day roles focus on, and our office is a little different, and I'll get it more into compliance in a second. Our office is a little different than others. Some schools have their compliance offices set up by a sport, who works with each sport. Some of them have more bylaw-specific areas they work in, like recruiting, financial aid, eligibility, academics. Our office is a little bit of a hybrid of both. I have a handful of sports I work primarily with. Right now it's track and field, cross country, men's volleyball, and men's soccer. And then specifically within our office, we have like working groups in all the major areas. So I'm part of our monitoring, education, and then further going to be doing work in our auditing and like policy making space. And then what compliance is in general. So the NCAA has a handbook that's about this thick. Well, now it's probably about this thick. They cut out about 100 or so pages with all the new stuff happening in college athletics, which I know we'll get into in this. But the main areas for NCAA compliance, things that we have to monitor kind of on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis are, so the NCAA has tons of different bylaws, but the major ones are bylaws 11 through 17. You have personnel, so who is involved with the sports, from coaches all the way down to student managers, what certain non-coaching staff members can do, whether that's a director of operations or a video coordinator or whatever. You have bylaw 12, which is amateurism, complex space nowadays because of all how the rules are changing, but still things we need to track on as far as especially like international student athletes, what they're doing, because the high school model is different overseas. 13, recruiting. No matter what, we're always going to have coaches who are going out and recruiting, and there are going to be rules tied to that. Bylaw 14 is eligibility from the academic side. You still have to get grade. At the end of the day, all the stuff we're going to talk about, there's still going to be an academic mission of the NCAA. It's what separates the main difference between the pro leagues and college. Bylaw 15 is financial aid. 16 is benefits that student athletes can receive, all the way from the gear they wear, the food they eat, what the community can do for them. And then bylaw 17 is their playing season, how many times they can compete, games they play, when they can do it. So those are the main areas. So it keeps us busy on a day-to-day basis. Beyond that, we kind of serve as a landing spot for a lot of different areas, especially within a campus, whether it's housing, parking, where do I go to find X, Y, and Z. A lot of times I don't answer questions about compliance. I just try to find the right person to talk to. So it's a long-winded way of saying I do a lot, but also a lot of stuff that's not in the job description.
Sure. How about from a high school perspective? How do you connect to what's happening in the high school level with their student athletes? What's your role there?
Yeah, so a lot of the interaction we have in the high school space is driven by our coaching staff. So the coaching staff, in general, we're talking about the summer following a high school student athlete or a PSA, a prospective student athlete's sophomore year of high school. It's earlier in other sports that student athletes can get involved. Football can get involved a little earlier as far as, speaking with them, bringing visits to campus. A lot of it will happen around that sophomore year time where we start checking in on how their grades are doing, where we can advise them to improve. Every institution's different because academic requirements are different across the board, and every school has different requirements. For example, when I worked at Fresno State, you had to take a full year of a visual or performing art which a lot of non-California, and that was the whole California State University system. So a lot of student athletes coming in from out of state, Nevada, Arizona, Washington, they didn't have what they needed. Doesn't mean you can't come there. It's just we may have to advise you to do something different. So, I mean, that's a lot of it. Sometimes there's more higher level things you have to dig into, especially in like the Olympic sport space, golf, tennis, where somebody may be competing in a lot of competitions, possibly winning prize money. Prize money is a big one, making sure that they're only receiving what covers their actual necessary expenses, tracking on that, and kind of guiding them through the NCAA process. One of the things everybody always talks about, okay, get your NCAA Eligibility Center ID. We take care of that, help you manage that profile, take care of the tasks that are on there, whether it's talking to the athlete directly, by way of the coaches, taking calls from parents. We kind of do it all. So it's really just making sure they're checking those boxes and getting set up for success.
You referenced football as a specific sport there, and the ability that they have to maybe recruit or have communication with their student athletes a little earlier on. Can you talk to some of that for me? I know that as I speak with families, they are asking how early that their students can actually be involved and have some conversations, and I just try and give them some perspective on what they can expect to hear from coaches and how much and those sorts of things. So maybe you could share.
Yeah, definitely. So like I said, the general rule for sports, other than football, basketball, and a couple other carve-outs, is that you're not going to be able to have recruiting conversations with your coaches until generally it's June 15th after your sophomore year. Baseball, softball, it's a little different as far as, August, September, depending on when it is. Football is different because you can take visits to football campuses or to campus for a football unofficial visit really at any time. So you can show up and, as a freshman, you can go on an unofficial visit, go to a game, receive tickets and stuff like that. So there is a chance for some more interaction there. In general, it's going to happen later, though, as time goes on. And in general, what'll happen too is if you reach out to a coaching staff member, they're always able to respond to you by saying, hey, here's why I can't speak with you yet. We'll talk later. They can send you camp information whenever they want to. A lot of times coaches will set up like replies with camp info included with it, like, hey, come on out to our, make sure you can come out to our camps and everything. You may receive, let's see, what else can you receive? You can receive admissions information. They may link you over to just general information from the school. So there's going to be things that you could, in a perfect world, be receiving, but that after your sophomore year is when things are definitely going to ramp up in most cases.
So stay with recruiting here for a minute. If you were a sophomore or I guess going into your junior year now, so you got to pass that deadline, what's the best advice that you can give a high school student athlete who wants to get connected with coaches about how they should go about doing that? What's the best way to do it, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, in my opinion, understanding kind of where you stand as far as, looking at, and what's nice about, like, I'll take a sport like track and field, right? Where you can look at what the performance measures are for, your area, pretty easily on TFRRS, TFRS is what people will call it. You can get an idea of what it takes to be competitive in those areas because, sure, you can reach out to any of the big power schools that you want, but a lot of them have benchmarks where they may not even offer a walk-on spot, a non-scholarship spot to somebody unless they're hitting a certain point. So having a realistic view of what your abilities can go to is helpful because a lot of times those coaches are working under pressures that aren't similar to what bigger schools are. There's less people on the coaching staff to be able to recruit different areas. So they may be looking for somebody just like you, but there's not a chance for them to necessarily find it just because of the constraints that are put on them. And as far as reaching out, I mean, at that point, especially once you get past your summer of your sophomore year, emailing them, almost every coach has their email listed on their athletics website. Every school has an athletics website all the way from Division I through NAIA, Division III, Division II. A lot of them will have recruiting questionnaires listed on their websites that you can fill out to provide information and kind of get that ball started for them. So taking the initiative is super important. in that thing. I mean, honestly, the reason I got to throw at Valpo was because, oddly enough, I was at a funeral talking to a former football coach at the Valpo High School, and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm going to Valparaiso University." He's like, "Oh yeah, well, you're in track." He's like, "You gonna throw for him?" I was like, "No, I didn't have a plan to." He's like, "Well, go talk to the coach." And I did, and one thing led to another. I became a scholarship athlete, a conference champion, and kind of shaped where I am today. So initiative is super important. Kind of understanding where your success can lead you and being realistic about it. And it'll open more doors than you can imagine.
So when we're talking about roster numbers and things like that, it leads me to the current state of the NCAA right now and the rulings that came down a couple weeks ago, probably a month or so ago now. But what are you seeing is the state of the college landscape right now, and how do you think things will shape up this year, and then what do you think we're going to see in the next couple years? If you can talk to that, just your opinion.
Yeah. What you're seeing a lot of right now is, especially in a sport like track and field or things like swimming and diving, you're seeing schools decide that they're going to specialize in certain areas over others. And what you're referring to being the roster limits they're placed upon moving forward. Schools are just having to decide where they want to focus their efforts. Now, roster size and scholarship numbers provided aren't necessarily the same thing. You might hear of a school that only provides a certain number of scholarships. Maybe, for example, a track and field team may be able to provide 40 full scholarships. Well, that could be 40 in-state scholarships, or the number, or what they consider a full scholarship. What I think you'll see more and more of, and this is why it's important to see great opportunities that can happen, especially at the Division II, the Division III level, the lower divisions in Division I, whether that be your traditional FCS football conferences or what people call your mid-majors, so Conference USA, things like that. You'll see those, they may not have as large of rosters, but they may say, hey, we want to have more of distance swimmers or throwers or sprinters, or just depends on what sport you're looking at. With that said, there's going to be sort of a talent, there's going to be a constraint that's put on, because not only because there's roster limits, but schools are having to be more intentional about where they invest their money. Not everybody, as we know across college sports, there's only a handful that would turn a profit, and those who are claimed to turn a profit would probably tell you it's not as much as you think. Right. One thing that's always said at a place like Ohio State, we make a lot of money, but we also spend a whole lot of money. When you have 36 sports and you're trying to make an effort to accommodate them all to the best of their abilities, ultimately it's going to deal with a lot of spending. So that said, what you'll see more of is, I think you'll see definitely some specialization in sports, some emphasis being placed in certain things. With that, there may be less of an opportunity in the sense of, not everybody's going to carry as many athletes and not have the ability to carry as many athletes as they used to. But what it does is it benefits the person who's going to be proactive, who's going to be, utilizing a service such that you're providing, knowing who to reach out to, who to talk to, knowing how to get things set up to make their situation less work for a coaching staff. And what I mean by that is, a lot of times, you can reach out and be like, hey, I'm ready to come compete, but they've never submitted a transcript to the eligibility center. We don't know what their situation looks like.
Yeah.
Maybe they're omitting something that they didn't know they were supposed to be including, and then all of a sudden they've invested time in, and it's like, well, now we could have been recruiting somebody else. But if you're ready to go, and in a sense, a low maintenance recruit, things can be very positive for you.
What advice would you give to Andrew Guzek from high school who was looking to go to college about the athletic experience?
Based on what I know now, and everything, I think admitting that you don't know everything is very important. Being able to be coachable, not just on the field of play, but also just in life in general. Take advice seriously. A lot of times, especially coaches, people who work around athletic departments, have been working in athletics for a while, or were an athlete themselves, so they know what the process looks like, what it should look like. They probably also know what it looks like when it's really bad. And they can kind of foretell you the way things are going to turn out. So being willing to accept information that's given to you is definitely important. You're not, especially once you get to a college athletic department, everybody was good in high school or else they wouldn't have been recruited. Mm-hmm. So being able to work hard in all facets. Of course, you want to work hard and compete at a high level, but also, as I mentioned before, you want to, make yourself as low maintenance as possible in the sense of I want to have good grades. I want to keep my nose clean as far as academic, no academic misconduct or things happening in your community. I went to school in a place that I grew up in, so your name means something more if you're close to home. And just remembering that, and I think I've already said it once, but you are not the big person anymore. You're not the, may have been highly touted, recruited, but so was everybody else in a way. So being ready to put that aside and then work hard and get to where you should be, that you think in your head is not as easy as you think. Being able to fill all of those buckets is important.
What makes a great recruit for a place like Ohio State?
Well, we are unique in the sense that let's see. If I had to pinpoint a couple areas, one, you need to be very good at what you do. We shoot for national championships in every sport. We try to set the bar as much as we can. We look for success. That being said, not even everybody within a football program or basketball program is a 5-star recruit. There's only so many that can go around. You definitely need to be a good person, and I mean that not just you're good, nice to talk to or anything, but we have a lot of exposure just because, being a large athletic department with success in the past, mm-hmm. People are looking at us to figure out how to do things the way we're doing, but at the same time, they want to know what aren't we doing so well, because at the end of the day, if something happens, ESPN's going to come knocking and they're going to want to put something out about it. So you definitely need to have high integrity. People talk about the tradition, the honor, and excellence here. It's kind of where the in Ohio State comes from, making sure that we're taking care of business, not just on the field of play, whatever the case may be. And another thing, and I kind of alluded to it before, every school has different academic standards. We do expect our student athletes, even in the admissions process, we want high achieving student athletes where possible, because that opens you up to the possibility of receiving merit-based scholarships. So we definitely want our student athletes to succeed. So, you got to be good at what you do, and that can go beyond just being a high-achieving student athlete. That's, being somebody who has a lot of integrity, takes care of business in the classroom, is respectful, and ultimately we're all trying to represent, and this goes for employees as well, we're trying to represent the Blocko the best that we can. Don't get me wrong, you do need to be successful in your sport, but there is more that comes to it than just that.
Well, Andrew, thank you so much for taking the time today. It's been great to have you on here and just to get to catch up a little bit, and I wish you the best there at Ohio State and with everything moving forward. So I know you got a big paperweight that you started wearing on your hand the other week, so that's exciting to have that sort of thing. But you guys are going to have a lot of success there, I'm sure. So thanks again for stopping in today. Guys, we're glad to have Andrew here, and we're looking forward to our next conversation, and we'll see you on the other side. Thanks.
Thanks, man.